Amazing. All right, here we are, 203. We'll let the folks continue to trickle in, but thank you everybody for joining. I appreciate it. You've got me at we'll call it 40%, even though I know I look 80%. So I apologize for the sore throat and everything, but hope everyone's feeling good and doing okay. Very excited today to be interviewing Patrick Flynn. Just for some quick context, Patrick was one of the very, very early people in corporate sustainability, worked on Salesforce's sustainability program starting in 2015, I think, and you were there for 7 or 8 years. And Salesforce, for anyone in the corporate sustainability world, probably knows is one of the better programs in corporate sustainability. They stick their neck out on the line a lot. They do a lot of really bold stuff. They invest not just in reporting and compliance, a lot of lobbying and a lot of product work with things like Net Zero Cloud that a lot of people know about. Since then, you left a few years ago, worked on a bunch of different projects, ranging from advising climate startups to founding Switchboard, which connects business leaders in climate change to really make a dent. So, with that context, where I wanted to start the conversation, Patrick, is like I said, Salesforce, one of the better programs out there, and you guys built a really impressive program. I want to start with the flip side. Tell me about something that didn't go well in your attempts to build sustainability at Salesforce. What flopped? What lost steam? What never gained momentum? What backfired? What did not go well in the time you were running?
Yeah. Okay. Without trying to damage the amazing reputation you laid out of all the great people at Salesforce.
Gonna
You know,
humble you.
one um one of the coolest things that happened, I'll start here, was when I first took the job, the sustainability team reported into PR, which was like a orange to red flag for me. Do you want me to come in and talk about things, or do you want me to come in and do the things? But the woman Chai, who I initially reported to on the PR team, I come in, I think it was my very first meeting with her. She said, you know, I want you to push the limit. Nobody, we haven't figured out where no is yet at Salesforce when it comes to sustainability. And like, what an amazing permission to fail, permission to push things, like game on. And so I was thrilled to hear that. And we pushed things pretty hard, pretty fast back then, like trying to accelerate to 100% renewable energy even faster than we already had planned, trying to compensate for all scope 1, 2, 3 emissions even faster than we had planned. And Salesforce has now done those things, but we definitely face some like we're not going full speed ahead immediately right ahead. We had to lay some groundwork first. Um, from that same era, one of the coolest things that also happened was we on the renewable energy front, I think it was, went to the CFO, Mark Hawkins, with a big financial ask for some VPPAs. And we get through all the presentation, and he says, we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do and because it makes good business sense. But when you come meet with me, we're always going to think about things in that order.
I know that's not the end of the story, but I think that's so uncommon. And I
Yeah,
want to unpack that a bit. A lot of companies, even 2 years ago, when like things were to the moon, but certainly now when markets are down financially, when the political, it's all headwinds, no tailwinds, you are not going to hear a lot of CFOs say
right.
the right thing, what is the wrong thing. You're going to say, yeah, that's nice, but I got to deal with my stock price.
Yep.
How would your strategy have changed then if the CFO said, good, right thing's the right thing. That's for charities, that's for nonprofits, that's for our giving program. If you're coming to me, I need to know, is this going to make us money or save us money? Would
Yeah.
your strategy have changed very much?
Definitely. And I think you're right that that kind of interaction is from a era that's mostly in the past, right? And most sustainability teams now are facing, show me how this makes good business sense. And business sense can go from like making the business case in a like essentially within the spreadsheet that the finance team already has, cost reduction, efficiency, And then there are like kind of squishier parts of the business case, happier customers, stickier relationships, goodwill, attracting and retaining top talent. And like I feel like teams are not only being made to make the business case, but also less faith or less attention maybe in some of those harder to model business case elements. Um, so it's hard, but you'd better be good at your spreadsheets and your math. And I think we still need every team to continue to point out that talent is one of the biggest costs for this organization, and motivated and healthy employees and supply chain resilience and risk reduction. These are all maybe hard to model in a single number, but they're, even if we swing at it, the financial value is massive compared to energy efficiency strategy, right? So encouraging people to keep on swinging high. The silver lining in all of this moment is, in that somewhat bygone era I was talking about, in order to have a credible sustainability program, you really needed to light up every single facet of the company. You needed buildings and data centers and energy and water and nature and da 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 da, which spread teams pretty darn thin. And that was kind of table stakes in order to take big swings within the company, to have the credible program, to do something bold in perhaps a good way. We're going to give each other a break a little bit, and to have a credible program might be like, we at company X, we know our unique destiny in all of this is to do this one thing, and we're going to do it better than anybody else. And other companies can focus on their one thing. So kind of a specialization down to climate superpowers in this moment, where those superpowers really line up with strong business sense.
And that's what that was sort of the story behind Net Zero Cloud, right? It was what are we at Salesforce particularly unique at?
Yeah, I remember even way back in the interview process, I was like formulating the language to say Salesforce's superpower is software, essentially in the hands of every company on the planet in some way. Our unique role in climate and sustainability is to use that software to help our customers on their sustainability journey. And so Net Zero Cloud began with our own team using Salesforce technology for our own footprint and modeling and data, to a group of pilot customers trying to use it who were still stuck in spreadsheets at the time, to getting it finally into the full-blown product with engineering teams and marketing, and brought it to the core of the business. So that was a big entrepreneurial journey, and one of the main strategies I was trying to push on top of everything else throughout my time there.
Yeah. Do you think this kind of makes me think one thing that's also true about the 2010s in corporate sustainability is there weren't really any laws that regulated this work. There were lots of around environmentalism,
Right.
and waste and pollution and chemicals and probably around water there were laws which for Salesforce maybe affected how you manage your data centers a little bit, but certainly nothing like what exists today around the California regulations around
Yep.
building the world around CSRD Canada. Like I saw somewhere there's 4,000 environmental regulations introduced in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Um, it's probably not totally true, but I saw it on the internet, so it must be. Uh, that creates a twofold experience. One is what you said earlier, which is you were expected to do everything, and now you're expected to lean into the superpower. But it also that like blue ocean meant you could do anything. Like
Right.
when we have the most impact, shoot for the stars. We
Yep.
don't know where the goal is, so let's kick it as far as we can. But with regulations, what happens is now instead of just the ambitious companies doing this, everyone has to do something,
Hmm.
which is a good thing.
Hmm.
But instead of nobody knowing where the goal is, everyone knows exactly where the bar is. And many people, even the more ambitious ones, are going to drop to the bar because now we have a bar.
Hmm.
Do you see it the same way? If not, why? And if yes, what change do you think that has on just the corporate world's ability to influence climate change?
Yeah. Great. Yeah, awesome. For a long time, we were saying in Salesforce, the way we talk about climate and sustainability data, it very soon is going to need to look like the way that we calculate and communicate core financial data. So we were kind of on that, and that was a big part of Net Zero Cloud and getting a future-proof system of record in place. Now we see mandatory disclosure. A shout out to all the great companies who have leaned in, particularly on the California laws. Ceres has been incredibly helpful on that. And we can do this. It's good for the economy. We have tools, Salesforce, Watershed, where I'm now an advisor, like we have the tools to make it happen. And it's foundational to changing the scoreboard of capitalism with comparable timely data so that we can start investing with where we work, investing our dollars and investing who we buy from to change the competitive landscape to make the world a better place. But like you say, mandatory disclosure, it raises the floor because companies who either were absent or reluctant to disclose now have to. But it also drops the ceiling for some companies as well, because you end up with greater oversight from teams that are more attuned to what's the minimum we need to do, what's the risk if we do more. And so for leading companies from that era in the past where we were making goals that were consistent with what the planet needed, and we'll figure out how to deliver on that to the best of our ability, but like, let's aim that high. That is a tough thing now with compliance and risk and mandatory disclosure. We need companies to keep doing that. There's the Les Brown quote, better to aim high and miss than to aim low and hit. And that was something we talked about throughout Salesforce time. And when you mentioned the big swing programs and policy and things like that, that was part of the culture and the mindset that we were evangelizing. Like, we need to swing big, create ripple effects, work on strategies that even if they start small, we can talk about a way that they could get big enough, create ripple effects big enough that planet Earth would actually notice the effort.
Yeah. By the way, if anyone has questions throughout, you're welcome to drop into the chat, into the Q&A, and we'll read them out. Right now, you're running Switchboard, which is mostly about connecting people in this space. And a big part of what you do is you push these companies to do more by setting examples of people who do a really good job. So related to what you were just talking about who is, we used to be ambitious, we used to aim high and maybe miss, but aim high. Who, and it's maybe harder today. Who today do you look to and be like, yeah, like they're really kicking butt. They are impressive on all these fronts. They're sticking their neck out and they're doing really, really good work. Who do you look up to? Who's doing a good job?
Well, obviously start with somebody like Patagonia, remaining bold and strong, and you know, protect our winters and the
Autumn
outdoor.
Chandler and
Yeah,
Aspen
well,
Ski.
yeah. Aaron Sprague, Auden was at Aspen One, recently moved on. Aspen One's doing great, bold work. I think outdoor industry, winter sports in particular, who really feel direct impacts from climate to their core business, those are the organizations I think most with the most to lose from inaction, and with the community and eyeballs on what they're doing and saying, that love the outdoors, that are focused on climate action because of what it delivers to them, their future, their generations to come and all that. So there's a lot of boldness still in that industry.
Yeah, I like that framing. I mean, it's one of the things we talk about at Beehive a lot, which is I used to work in carbon accounting, and there a lot of the conversations were through 2050. It was, don't we all agree that if we don't reach these goals by 2050, our business is going to be in trouble? And that's fine, but honestly, nobody has the imagination to think about the year 2050. Um,
Yeah,
it's very far away. Uh,
yeah.
but if you talk about risk and you talk about the short term, so you
Hmm.
about winter sports, like if it snows 20 fewer days next year than it did
Right.
that costs you probably 15% of revenue. That is really, really, really significant. And so if you can tie climate to short-term risk, not theoretical, global visions of a greener future because no
Right.
one's got the imagination and no one's got the patience. But you say this wildfire was bad this month, then you can probably incentivize a lot of action faster.
Yeah. And it gets to kind of the wicked structural nature of climate change and climate action. You know, we know climate action costs less collectively than climate inaction. It like if you zoom out, think about the greatest good for the greatest many, it's very logical to take strong climate action. But the cost and benefit is not spread evenly, right? You know, climate action hurts the powerful few. Climate inaction hurts in small ways the distributed and less powerful many. But winter sports, you know, in our lifetime, seasons have gotten 20 to 30% shorter. And so there's like it acutely is felt there. And different industries will have that chance to really feel the pain of inaction. But what's most exciting is the opportunity of action for the industries that embrace this and leadership and brand value and all of that. So there's a bright side to it as well. But that structural, not just the power dynamics, but also the time horizon you're talking about. You know, it's very hard to think about long-term benefits for the greatest many with that long-term nature in it. And the delays are so long that without a doubt, 2050, we're all going to have wished that we did even more in 2025. Like that's just physics. But knowing that and changing what you do today, especially if you're, you know, looking at quarterly earnings or annual earnings, short-term thinking, you know, it's very hard to justify those strategies.
Do you know the movie Erin Brockovich with Julia Roberts?
Yeah, I haven't watched it since whatever,
Yeah,
95. But yeah.
2000. 2000. I've never seen it. I watched it for the first time last weekend. And so I had a LinkedIn post today that I thought was witty about that's actually the greatest ESG movie ever made. And I'll explain why. The whole movie, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is a small law firm in California gets brought into a case and finds a chemical leak due to PG&E's poor handling of water contamination facilities. And sorry to ruin it for you, but PG&E ends up paying $333 million to the local community. And that totally could have been avoided with a couple $1 million and spend in better water safety practices.
Mm,
And then, the punchline of my post is in classic corporate fashion, PG&E did not learn their lesson because 18 years later, they were part of the campfires in California where they went bankrupt and it created a $13 billion settlement. And
mm.
so my takeaway was that the business case for sustainability and risk management is very clear. Like $333 million fine is a very clear business case. It's not, you don't even need much imagination for that. But watch the movie. The problem is not the business case, it's storytelling.
Mm.
Be able to share this business case in a way that is relevant to my CFO and my CEO and my board with my particular needs. Because the Erin Brockovich, she won an Oscar and nominated for four others. Great movie. But what happened to PG&E in the 90s or even in the 2010s is not relevant to me, the CFO of a fintech company, or to me, the board member at a big retailer, because I don't deal with energy, so it's not what I need. So my question for you around storytelling is who tells great stories? Who's convincing? Who's exciting? Who shares these things in a good way? And are there any takeaways that you would give if you were advising a large corporate climate program about using storytelling to better further their corporate sustainability work?
Well, all of the concept of the words need to change is pervasive right now in the CSO world. And I keep mentioning Amory Lovin's famous quote, Amory from Rocky Mountain Institute. People don't care about energy, they care about cold beer and hot showers.
Yeah.
And this coming from an energy nerd, you know, focused on energy efficiency and there's an analog here in the work of sustainability in climate. You know, people don't care about climate as much as they care about lower utility bills and fewer wildfires and less flooding and resilience and healthy air. And all of those things connect to typical people living their life, even me and you as well. And we're in climate because of those things, but to wrap it all up into climate kind of misses the connection point. So I think we're definitely entering a period where talking about the day-to-day impacts of action and inaction is how we're going to rebuild momentum for the important work that needs to get done.
How much of that do you think is a good use of time versus a total waste of time?
Well, I think part of Switchboard's reason for being is the amount of duplicative effort happening company to company. And this is effort that's pre-commercial, pre-competitive, done by brilliant people who are working for the planet. And so when company X needs to rewrite some language to better connect to their stakeholders, the leaders at company Y who have worked on it and figured it out are happy to share. So it's just a matter of making sure they know one another, trust one another, and I think there's a lot of benefit to be done by connecting the dots across companies, which is a big part of Switchboard, and deduplicating a lot of the effort. BC3, the Business Council for Climate Change here in San Francisco, commissioned a study like right after the election about how the language needs to change and shared it with their members, but also shared it with me and said happy to share it with anybody else. So anybody on the call who wants to look at that, you don't need to hire your own communications firm, at least to get, the first laps under your belt.
Yeah. Let's dive a little deeper into words. There's a lawyer on this call who I like a lot. And so let's ask a few legal questions because a lot
Okay.
of um, corporate sustainability has moved into the legal function. I'm actually curious, who did you report up to in 2015 when you joined Salesforce?
A woman named Chai in the PR team,
Yeah,
maybe
marketing.
say it again.
Marketing. It was PR and
Yeah,
marketing.
yeah, in comms, PR, marketing, exactly, rolled up that way. Within within a year, I began reporting to Suzanne DiBianca, the Chief Impact Officer, who has reported to Mark since the very beginning of the company. So, that kind of red flag of how serious is this company, not just the mandate from that first meeting with Chai, but also the structural change to empower the team was really helpful in lighting up the company.
Yeah. So that's actually I haven't been doing this as long as you have, but even in my few years here, I've seen that transition, which when I started, everything lived in marketing or HR and people. It was this is good for our brand, this is good for our hiring.
Hmm.
It's 2 years, pros and cons, but I think mostly pros. This has moved into the legal department and this has moved into the finance department or investor
Hmm.
relations,
Yep.
which creates its own cons. Now we're just talking about compliance and follow the law, but it also means there's no BS. Like lawyers don't mess around. You either say something and you mean it and you back it up, or don't waste my time trying to say it. So my question for you around all these words, and what we use is give us a bit of the insight about what you're hearing from these CSOs about legal concerns about being out in front or at least even disclosing this stuff.
Mm.
There's oftentimes, I think, understandably but unfairly, DEI and environmental work are brought in under one roof. And I understand why that happens. And you see this very loudly and obviously with DEI is people taking DEI off their websites and taking it out of their reports and reports mentioned and they hide it and whatever. And everyone knows why that's happening. Um, I think people in the climate world are concerned that maybe there might be similar repercussions for being too transparent about what the company believes or is doing or is spending money on related to climate. What are
Yeah.
you hearing on that topic?
Yes, I think a lot of teams are moving more into legal compliance, finance, and I think it has a lot to do with mandatory disclosure, like we talked about. Um, and there is a natural, like, not even risk aversion, but appreciation for risk in those organizations, which is a good thing and good for making sure the numbers are correct and the goals are solid and rigor, right? Governance and rigor. But it's almost as if we need sustainability efforts happening over there that are compliance related, disclosure related, in some ways kind of looking in the rear view mirror about where we're going, where we've been and what we can say, and a sustainable innovation function that sits somewhere completely differently that's trying to figure out how do we change the future? How might things go? Like what are the opportunities? Where can we see great benefit from greater action? And so there's kind of a tension there, and I think a lot of individuals are living in both of those worlds a little bit and getting dragged more to pragmatic business reality as opposed to, for a lot of us, why we got into this work is to face forward and innovate and change the future boldly because we need it. ESG, like those three letters lumped together, was always odd for me. Like you, I get it, but that's like apples, oranges, and bananas is even too similar. You know what I mean? Like they're all interconnected, but the way you think about it, the way you execute on the strategy, three very different ways of thinking and domains. And I would, at least for me, I'd always say the most important letter in ESG is C for climate, because the way I think about it is, this is the foundation of it all, like a stable climate, stable biosphere. Climate change is the biggest risk, non-diversifiable, accelerating, irreversible, like time and effort spent there in service of people and planet and, life on Earth is some of the greatest returns on time invested.
Are CSOs scared or nervous right now? And if so, why? And if not, where are they getting the motivation?
I mean, we're seeing like teams cut and people's roles go away. So some people are like afraid or even beyond afraid, like not with a job anymore. That's happening and maybe not being talked about as much. Um, Maybe not so much scared, but anxious or depressed, right? Like if you could, science is real, physics doesn't stop. We need bold action. Even, holding the line, holding the pace is not as fast as what every scientist is telling us we need to do. So there's an uneasiness in that role with those who think of it as a holding a responsibility to do what the planet is telling us we need done, and not having the avenues to do it, but feeling like staying in the role is more effective than departing, and working an even harder chess match than they've faced before, and waiting maybe for the opening or finding the seam of business case and bold action and coalition that can allow them to deliver the impact that they dreamed about when they joined that company. And that's kind of the other point of Switchboard. In addition to duplication of effort being eradicated, these leaders, you sort of said, I like push them into this. It's more like a good thing when I can spot when Switchboard can spot a big moment that really matters that your company may be able to get excited about and step into. That's good news, hopefully delivered as much as possible on a silver platter, so you don't need to parse the many emails you're getting about all these opportunities, but like the great ones, and just say yes here and have the impact that you dream about. That's how I'm trying to deliver the calls to action.
Laura here asked a good question, which is when it comes to using sports as a storytelling vehicle for sustainability, what's a story that you think hasn't been told yet but should be?
Wow. I mean, like Laura, that's fantastic. And it gives me an excuse to go into sports analogies. So thank you, because I always want them. And if I'm talking to somebody who I know relates to sports analogy, I go for it. It's a great way to like kind of say something in few words that clicks, but I shy away because it doesn't relate to everybody, like
Yeah, this is the
anybody
big
outside
chance.
the United States
Your swing,
doesn't.
shoot your shot, kick the
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah, like anybody outside the United States like doesn't know baseball, right? Well, Japan and maybe some others. But like so there's one, like climate change and the amount of impact, the amount of points we need to score, runs we need to score with climate change is like being down 50 in the bottom of the ninth, you know? And that's where when I say big swings and switchboard delivering big swings, I'm thinking swinging for the fences on that. Like we, you know, if you're down 50 bottom of the ninth, like we need you to we need you to hit a grand slam and like start putting big swings on the board. And I'd almost rather a bunch of companies continue to take some big swings and strike out, but try than for everybody to go back to just bunting. Like it's not going to get us there fast enough. So there's that one. And then on the superpower front, I often use the one that, you know, soccer, nobody would ever challenge that scoring goals is part of how you win the game, but you don't send everybody up to score, like because one player in particular can use his or her hands, like that's their superpower. Like know your part on the field, use your superpower. You are in climate action, you've got this unique ability to use your hands, like to be this role player in a very particular way, whether that's in your supply chain or communicating with your customers or disclosing better and clearer or setting bolder targets. It's a little bit about industry. It's a little bit about geography. It's also a little bit about who is lit up on your executive team and in your company. If you've got a procurement leader who's like on it, like run with that and teach the class to the rest of us about how to do it.
Yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of a play the hand you're dealt.
Yes.
You got his procurement, great. Make sure procurement is winning. If what you got is marketing, cool.
Yeah.
All good stories. If what you got is fine,
Yeah.
great. Like,
And then it's, you know, you've dropped a couple movies like the movie Rounders. I've been thinking about, you know, like Edward Norton's in trouble. Matt Damon is the poker player and needs to get like a gazillion dollars by morning to save his buddy, right? Like Matt Damon does not go to play like nickel slots. He goes and bets it all at a high stakes poker game. And he might have lost, but it was way more rational than making safe bets. Not that nickel slots are safe bets. This is not gambling advice. But like we need to swing big, even if it might mean losing. And I don't see enough of that. And it has to do with, often it has to do with influence. So you mentioned it earlier, influence over policy and using your voice, speaking boldly, standing up for those few things, maybe not everything, but the things that are really important to your company, like be the voice.
yeah.
And then so policy, but then also demand signaling and market forces are the other theory of change flavor that I love most. Like, don't hesitate to tell your suppliers they need to do better. Or not even your direct suppliers. If you're exposed to a whole bunch of emissions that have to do with residential heat pumps, even if they're way upstream of you, like go get serious, talk to Rewiring America and get serious about residential heat pumps and solve something there. So there's something in all of this about, you know, it's probabilistic. If you're sitting in a sustainability function looking at how to make some forward progress this year, there are some safer bets to make. I'll ask for a decent amount of money to make sure my building is LEED platinum this time instead of LEED gold, like relatively safe, relatively low returns, or there's a high stakes, low probability maneuver, the expected value of which might be even greater. And I'm going to go for that instead. And nothing against green buildings. I will say, like, I feel like green building strategies kind of get thrown into the greenwashing realm sometimes, but we need to give credit to the fact that part of where that's born is building teams are very in touch with it and lit up and ready to do everything they can. Fantastic. And for a startup with a new technology, a vendor to that green building, like a big customer adopting their new technology is a total game changer for them. So if even in things that might be incremental to your organization, if you're helping a new technology through the valley of death or showing a better way forward and teaching others how to do it, the ripple effects can be quite large.
Yeah. You were talking about low probability, high risk endeavors, which is basically on my resume. Like
Yes. Okay, tell me more.
I think about my career, which is a perfect segue into there's a few people on here who are mid stage in their career. Yeah, folks on here in their 40s and 50s who have a lot of influence. There's also a couple of people on here I know who are earlier in their career. I see a few
Mhm.
folks in their 20s and early 30s. If you were to speak directly to them, and by the way, folks, this is my sort of last line of questioning. If you have questions, drop in the chat, Q&A. Uh, but if you were to speak directly to them, how would your advice differ? What does somebody with sway and influence and a senior title do that a junior person cannot? And
Mhm.
what is the opportunity ahead for a junior person where they're not in boardrooms and C-suite executive meetings, but they might have 30 years of their career well ahead of them? How does your advice differ?
Yeah, some pieces of advice are the same and some are different, right? Um, I think for anyone in general, take what you do best and do that for impact. If you're an artist, if you're a musician, if you're a lawyer, if you're a procurement officer, if you're a math geek, like there's a community for you and there's work to be done everywhere, right? So don't think you need to be something you're not or go back to environmentalist school. Like do your thing. Um, but earlier in your career, in general, you need to push yourself to do things you don't like to do and that you don't know how to do. And I think as you get more senior, you've tried it, you've confirmed you're not good at it, or you've confirmed you really don't like it, and you've done it enough that you understand it and can speak the language. But at that point, specialization becomes way more interesting. So if you're a 30-year veteran with a huge network and a specialty and a brand, a personal brand of influence, like do exactly that and rally your people and rally your craft around climate action.
Yeah. I kind of struggled with that myself a few years ago when I was trying to, I'd done a bunch of environmental work in the past, but not particularly actively. And all I really know is sales. And I was like, oh, that's not like, who cares? But I don't know. You build something cool, someone's got to sell it. Uh,
Yeah,
I got friends who are in human resources and they're like, what am I going to do with this recruiting skill set? Like, I know how to use Workday really well. I'm like, well, like, an energy company needs the recruiter. Like
yeah,
go play your part. Um,
right.
like if a great quarterback needs 10 other teammates and they can't catch, or they
Yeah, yeah.
um
Yeah, that's right. I think the other thing is Katie Cross at Duke University has a 2x2 matrix that's really helpful for anybody, any stage of their career. I think about it all the time. It's traditional company and sustainable company and traditional role and sustainable role. And there's no magic quadrant to be in to have impact. You can show up anywhere in your next job on any part of that landscape and do brilliant things and change the company from the inside.
what about your career, Patrick? So you left Salesforce a little over 2 years ago. Since then you've been doing some advising. Switchboard is about connecting a lot of people, putting on events, kind of leading these conversations. You're not in your early 20s, but you got plenty of your career left. What are you focused on for the next few years?
Switchboard is all about the urgency of the moment. When I started in sustainability 20 years ago, it was it was plausible that low single digit emissions declines globally and every company doing their part could get us to the finish line fast enough. Um, Even I was head of sustainability at a data center company, kind of still feeling like we could do our part, show the way forward, others will join. Early into being at Salesforce, we start to need upper single digit global emissions declines. And it's like, I don't think every company is going to get into gear and deliver that fast enough. So Salesforce, we better be outpacing and catalyzing and ripple affecting and big swinging, like that's rational. And we can maybe get to the finish line fast enough with a bunch of companies doing that. And many companies did and tried, and now we need low double-digit global emissions declines. And collective action now is the nature of the gear that we need to get into. A group of companies coming together among their sustainability teams to collectively influence a policy or shape a market or give a jump start to a new technology. I think that's what we need to figure out how to do better as a society, as a community of climate leaders, in order to be rationally attempting to move things big enough, fast enough. And that's what I'll be doing, trying to stay in touch with the fact, like Bill McKibben says, winning slowly is the same as losing with climate. We need this new unprecedented gear to shift into. And Switchboard, the mission is all about building a engine, building a machinery, building a network that can deliver corporate collective action to the movements and moments that matter most.
Can people raise their hand to be part of Switchboard, or are you tapping shoulders? Like when I got into college, I Googled the secret societies of my college, and I found one. It was called the Gimgel Society, and it had been at North Carolina since like the late 1700s. And I was like, ooh, like I want to be part of Gimgel Castle and Gimgel Society. No one tapped me on the shoulder. It was just like basketball stars and just smart people, and I didn't get a single time. I had to pay to join a frat, and that's is Switchboard like pay to join a frat or be tapped on the shoulder?
Somewhere right in the middle. So I have had a lot of people inbound, or I reach out to or catch up with or see at a conference like, great, yep, when you got something that I can help with, don't hesitate, bring me in. The way I think about being a member is as simple as you answer my next email or text or enjoy talking to me next time we bump into each other face to face. Like this is simply a network. And if I can keep delivering help both to the company leaders inside the companies, help in terms of deduplicating effort, giving good advice, but also serving up on a silver platter the big swing moments, they'll keep interested. And then help on the other side. I mean, this collective action problem is a market breakdown where you've got brilliant theories of change, new technologies, new policies being drafted, regulations, demand signals needed, and these theories of reality, theories of change don't turn into realities of change unless often at the last minute, a bunch of companies say, yeah, like I'll buy it if you build it. Or, hey, governor, we're in for this and we got your back. And so there's a breakdown there. And that's right in the middle of where I'm trying to deliver value between those two, up to the planet. Like the planet is my customer.
There you go. Someone had just popped in with a question, so I want to make sure we answer it. And it's kind of a combination um, of some stuff we talked about earlier, but the question was, in terms of messages coming down from the current administration and causing ripples with leaders, how would you advise sustainability professionals shifting strategies to show more direct ROI and business value? This is coming from a professional services company where leaders are not very enthusiastic about environmental sustainability overall. And the current focus for these leaders is more about regulatory compliance and disclosure than about action.
Mhm. Well, as a professional services company, your business case is in the growing amount of business that your customers need, understanding a lot of everything that you're trying to grapple with, changes in the administration, reporting, disclosure. So there is a way to just simply present it, kind of values and morality aside, as a big growing pot of business to the professional services industry. I'd probably go there. With all of the news and kind of like Jenga blocks getting pulled out of the United States of America's stability right now, part of the challenge with the interface to government affairs is they are overwhelmed taking into account all of the changes that are happening. And it's not just sustainability, it's immigration and tax and trade war and global conflict. And so one thing I've seen is it's hard for the sustainability team to get the attention or to add sustainability topics or diversity topics or reproductive right, who knows, to add that to a very overloaded team trying to grapple with everything that's happening. Um, so pick, I would pick wisely, build relationships, show business empathy, for the people trying to hold course here. They're as freaked out as you are probably, and it's kind of like an investment in a future moment. This is a very particular perfect storm of a winter season we're in right now, where it's risky to say too much, it's risky to not say anything. Economics, all of it, like seasons change. When it's a rainy day and it's cold outside, it's very hard to picture what being too hot in the sun feels like. It'll come. And so maybe there's a little bit of a midterm strategy of being a great business partner and building relationships and being ready to change the season and for when the season has really changed.
Yeah.
All that said, we have no time, so do everything you possibly can and
All
work.
that said, season is now. Tis
Yeah,
the
yeah,
season,
yeah, yeah.
people. Tis the season. Beautiful. Patrick, thank you so much. This was a blast. I learned a lot.
Yeah,
Appreciate it and all the work you're doing.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Any more questions?
We'll give a minute if folks have other questions to ask. As we wait, just to let you know, we do this every single Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Next Thursday is sort of just a demo of Beehive. We're going to talk about assessing physical risk, talk about how you might do this manually, how you might do this inside of Beehive, and what you do with that information around physical risk and multiple hazards. So physical risk is on your mind. Join us next Thursday. And then the following 2 Thursdays are both interviews. On April 10th is an interview with Valvoline's head of ESG. She's wonderful, Ashley Scott. And then on April 17th is with Mike Hauer, who many of you know, who does a lot of communications strategy for firms. So here is the
Shout
link.
out to Mike Howard. I failed to mention him, but when you were asking a little bit about communications, he's one to follow. He's one to watch.
Yeah, yeah, he's fantastic. And so I'm excited for that. So there's a link to all of those events. Oh, there we go. One more question. So, oh, that's a good one. Where do you see the most interesting new ideas coming from regarding sustainable use of AI? Can't believe it's been 51 minutes and didn't even talk about AI.
Yeah. I'm most intrigued right now about its ability to synthesize large amounts of data, right? So you see satellite mapping and imagery overlaid with XYZ, but so that's nothing new. You're all attuned to that. I think spotting um, likely or unlikely coalition members could be a coming attraction. Everybody's putting out mandatory disclosure, CDP reports, annual sustainability reports, like synthesize all of that and tell me which companies mention policy for clean energy in Vietnam anywhere, right? Like there may be 20 companies that are signaling they want something, and if you bring them together, that's a force. So, any sort of that digestion of where sustainability teams are going or want to go or want to see different in the future and assembling teams behind that. So if you're capable of doing that or working on that or have that done, definitely holler. And
Yeah.
then the other, like, not so much AI, but when you were starting to say interesting domains right now, financed emissions is one of the most interesting places for me now. I think of three legs of the financed emissions stool. There's cash, there's 401ks, and there's insurance. And respectively, we've got Topo Finance, we've got Carbon Collective on the 401k front, and Premiums for the Planet. What's beautiful about these is they are big levers for change. Um, Engaging banks like any other supplier to set bolder commitments, or even just to manage your cash and deposits in a way that delivers a future you want, as opposed to continuing to fund fossil fuels at the pace they are. it's a huge lever, and we haven't pulled it as well as we've pulled all other supply chain mobilization. Same for 401ks and having options for climate aligned 401ks, and same for pushing the insurance industry, which is very much front and center and a big part of what Premiums for the Planet is doing. So those are the kind of big outcomes, like the big payday, Matt Damon style. Like, there's work to be done. We know how to play this game. We know how to push and influence suppliers. It takes a bunch of customers saying the similar thing, similar things, similar times, innovating together with their counterparts at the financial institutions, and the payoff is going to be very big. So I've spent a lot of time evangelizing that, and would be remiss if I didn't mention all those three organizations here.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll also share one of the ways in which we use AI. One of the things that's always bothered me about the sustainability world is how much time people spend on reporting. It's just the biggest waste of time. I think measurement, if it takes you all year, then you haven't actually done any management. You could say that around carbon emissions, which is how it works right now. You spend 9 months measuring your emissions, 3 months writing a report, and then it's January again. We don't do carbon emissions, we do climate risk. But AI writes your full TCFD report. It takes
Mhm.
seconds instead of taking 5 months before you finally get a draft. And we don't do that because it's the world's most impactful thing. It's almost the reverse. Like, get it done, do a good job of it, stamp of approvals, and then get to work actually managing that risk. I think
Yeah.
like if AI does a good job, and you need not just strong models and strong AI, but really good like software and UI user interface on top of that AI to give that AI the right prompts and whatever to measure things immediately so that you can get to managing these things as quickly
Mhm.
as possible. I think that's going to open up a lot of resources. I mean, if you look at any corporate sustainability team, they've got 3 to 5 people on reporting. And that's even if you don't have to do it CSRD. It's just all organizing data, putting carbon emissions values on that data, doing your double materiality assessment, like everyone is just assessing. And I'm so bored of assessing. I think assessing matters, but I just it's just not the right use of time, but it is an important use of time. But now with AI, if assessing takes 8 seconds, now
Mhm.
finally we can get into what we're actually trying to do here, which is
Yeah.
use that assessment to reduce emissions or
Mhm.
reduce risk or make an impact. And I think it's
Yeah.
big, really big.
Yeah. Trusted, comparable, timely disclosure of the data and risks opportunities is like a foundation block that we needed 30 years ago. And so we need it now more than ever. But it's like the precursor to then build strategy to do better and outcompete the comparable data that you're seeing over here, or to change where you work or to change who you buy from. So we need it yesterday. It'll be nice when AI is just writing all the reports and then separate AI is evaluating all the disclosure and like done. And every team is just trying to do better, run the race faster, be better. And the evaluation is just a balance sheet snapshot of how you're doing, AI to AI. That'll be
What
interesting.
are you doing, not how are you measuring? Well, one day soon, AI will
Yes.
be having a conversation for us and save me a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
Patrick, thank you. You're the man. I appreciate all the work that you do.
You
And
are the man.
us.
All right.
Folks,
Take
hope to
care.
see you next week or on future weeks. Patrick, you're all over the internet, but I think LinkedIn is your big home, right?
Yeah. Find me there.
Perfect.
Reach
Thank you.
out.
Bye.
Bye.